Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Bhante Sutaso. So we're back with the Sutta study. And this morning we will be learning with Bhante Sutaso. We will be reading the Bāhiya Sutta, one of the most wonderful suttas in the Pali Canon. I know we always say that to every sutta that we are studying during our Sutta study series, but it is a great sutta. So you can find the link at the top of the live chat. There is a link with Bhante Sutaso's website and the teachings on this particular sutta. And hello and welcome to Gita and Jens. Welcome today. And I think we can start with Bhante.
Yeah. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Well, good morning, friends, and welcome back to Sutta study. So it's been a little over a week since we last did Sutta study, since we've been doing the 7-day retreat. So starting back up with going through the words of the Buddha. And this particular discourse, the Bāhiya Sutta, is relevant to what we were talking about during the retreat, in that during the retreat we spoke a little bit about the practice of silent illumination, the meditation practice of directly seeing one's experience and letting go of one's misperception of it. And the Bāhiya Sutta is a sutta which very closely relates to silent illumination practice. And in fact, this is one of the suttas which is commonly quoted particularly within the Japanese Zen world. And it gives some very direct and powerful pointers to how to practice silent illumination practice. So as usual, I'll start reading through the discourse, and periodically I'll stop to explain a little bit about what's going on in the sutta. And then at the end, we can have questions and clarify whatever came up for you. So the sutta begins. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi at Jeta's Grove in Anathapindika's park. On this occasion, Bāhiya Daruchirya was living at Suparaka on the shore of the ocean, which was quite a ways from Savatthi, by the way. So if you look at a modern map of the location of Savatthi, it was not close to the ocean. So going on about Bāhiya, he was honored, respected, revered, worshipped, and esteemed. And he received robes, alms food, dwellings, medicine, and medical supplies. So he was highly respected, and he got everything that he needed. So the lay people apparently thought he was great. Then when Bāhiya was alone in retreat, this thought arose in his mind. There are beings in this world who are arhants, or are on the way to becoming arhants. I am one of them. In other words, Bāhiya thought that he was either already enlightened or that he was on the right track, that he was getting close. Then a deva who used to be one of Bāhiya's relatives knew what Bāhiya was thinking, and out of compassion and well-wishing for Bāhiya, he approached Bāhiya and said to him, Bāhiya, you are certainly not an arhat. And you are not on the way to becoming an arhat. You aren't even doing the practices by means of which you could be an arhat or be on the way to becoming an arhat. So I find this incredibly adorable. So whoever this deva is, I wish they would be a little more active, because there's a lot of people who need these kinds of reminders. And so also I'm thinking of this scene. I find this scene incredibly charming. So here's Bāhiya. He's this famous, wealthy monk living by the edge of the ocean, and everyone loves him. And he's sitting in meditation thinking, oh yes, I must be enlightened, or getting really close. And then this magnificent angel appears before him and says, Bāhiya, you're not enlightened, you're not even close, and you're not doing anything that will lead to enlightenment. So the angel comes down from heaven and says, no. So then Bāhiya says, then who in this world of devas is currently an arhat, or on the way to becoming an arhat? And the devas replies, Bāhiya, in the northern country there is a city named Savatthi. That is where the Blessed One lives now, the arhat, the fully self-awakened one. Bāhiya, that Blessed One is an arhat and teaches the way to becoming an arhat. So this deva apparently knew about the Buddha and sent Bāhiya to go and talk to the Buddha. Motivated by that deva, Bāhiya left Suparika. On his way to Savatthi, he only stayed one night in each place he passed through. In other words, he was focused on getting to Savatthi as quickly as possible. So he didn't waste any time along the way. Didn't take any time to take breaks. He would just get to a place, sleep for the night, and then get up and keep going the next day. When he arrived, he went to Jeta's grove and entered Anathapindika's park. On this occasion, several monks were doing walking meditation in the open air. Bāhiya approached those monks and said to them, Bhante, where does the Blessed One currently live, the Arhat, the fully self-awakened one? We wish to see the Blessed One, the Arhat, the fully self-awakened one. And this is interesting because this indicates that although Bāhiya was not a Buddhist at the time, he was already speaking very respectfully to the monks. So referring to them as Bhante, rather than normally when practitioners of non-Buddhist religions in the suttas, when they speak to the Buddhist monks, they normally use less polite terms of address. But here he calls them Bhante, which indicates he already had a fair amount of respect. Again, possibly because a deva appeared to him and told him to go see the Buddha. That might have changed his attitude a little bit. And the monks replied, Bāhiya, he has entered the residential area for alms. So apparently it was in the morning time and the Buddha had gone into Savatthi to collect his food for the day. Then Bāhiya went through Jeta's grove, leaving it behind and entering Savatthi. There he saw the Blessed One going for alms in Savatthi. Inspiring, inspirational, his appearance peaceful, his mind peaceful, with the utmost self-mastery and tranquility, trained, restrained, self-controlled, and majestic. Having seen the Blessed One, he approached him and lowered himself to the ground with his head at the Blessed One's feet, saying, Teach me the Dhamma, Bhante, Blessed One. Teach me the Dhamma, Sublime One, for the sake of my long-term benefit and happiness. When this was said, the Blessed One said to Bāhiya, This is not the time, Bāhiya. I have entered a residential area for alms. A second time, Bāhiya said to the Blessed One, Bhante, it is hard to know how long the Blessed One's life will last, or how long my life will last. Teach me the Dhamma, Bhante, Blessed One. Teach me the Dhamma, Sublime One, for the sake of my long-term benefit and happiness. So this I actually find really touching here. So Bāhiya, he traveled a very long distance without pausing, except to sleep. He traveled a very long distance. He gets to Savatthi, the Buddha's in the village. He goes to see the Buddha and asks the Buddha for teachings immediately. Well, first he bows and he asks for teachings. And when the Buddha says, no, this is not the time, Bāhiya, he says, I don't know when you might die or when I might die. In other words, he's saying, no, I'm not going to wait till the afternoon. Now, this really needs to be taken care of right now because we might not live that long. So he really doesn't want to miss this opportunity. So this also indicates the sort of attitude that we should take towards learning the Dhamma, towards hearing Dhamma talks, towards studying the suttas, towards engaging in meditation practice. We should have the same kind of attitude of, I don't know how much longer I'm going to live. So I'm going to try not to waste time. I'm going to try to make the most of the opportunities that I have. So a second time, the Blessed One said to Bāhiya, this is not the time, Bāhiya. I have entered a residential area for alms. So traditionally, while on alms rounds, a monk doesn't engage in conversation, doesn't get involved in other activities. They just focus on collecting their food and having their meal. And then after that's done with, then they might engage in teaching or study or discussion of some sort. So the Buddha is saying, no, this is not the time. This is not the time. Wait until I'm done. But Bāhiya continues to persist. He says, a third time, Bāhiya said to the Blessed One, Bhante, it is hard to know how long the Blessed One's life will last, or how long my life will last. Teach me the Dhamma, Blessed One. Bhante, Blessed One. Teach me the Dhamma, Sublime One, for the sake of my long-term benefit and happiness. And the Buddha replies, therefore, Bāhiya, this is how you are to train yourself. And here we get to the core teaching of this sutta. So listen carefully. This is how you are to train yourself. In the seen, there will be just the seen. In the heard, there will be just the heard. In the sensed, there will be just the sensed. In the cognized, there will be just the cognized. This, Bāhiya, is how you are to train yourself. Bāhiya, when it is like this for you, in the seen there is just the seen, in the heard there is just the heard, in the sensed there is just the sensed, in the cognized there is just the cognized, then, Bāhiya, there will be no you in terms of this. When there is no you in terms of this, then there is no you there. When there is no you there, there is no you here, or beyond, or in between. Just this is the end of suffering. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. So the practice that the Buddha is giving here. In the seen, there will be just the seen. In the heard, there will be just the heard. In the sensed, there will be just the sensed. In the cognized, there will be just the cognized. So this is an abbreviated form of the 6 senses. So sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought is here condensed to sight, sound, sensation, and thought, mind object. So it's just condensing it a little bit, but it's the same. So your physical senses and then your mind, your awareness of physical sensations and your awareness of mental objects. So he's saying whenever there is something sensed, whether physical or mental, whenever there is something seen, then let it just be something that's seen. Let it just be what it is. Don't add anything to the experience. Don't remove anything from the experience. Don't alter the experience. Just let it be what it is. So in the seen, let there be just the seen. So not conceptualizing our experience, not reacting to the experience. And then he says, when you practice in this way, there will be no you in terms of this. There will be no you there. There will be no you here or beyond or in between. In other words, in the seen, there is just the seen. It is not, I am seeing that. Me is seeing not me. It's just the seen. It's just seeing. So it's completely removing the me from the situation. It's completely removing the concept of self, the concept of me and mine, the concept of I am this, I am not that. Completely removing that concept entirely. So being fully aware of seeing, but without the concept of me seeing. Being fully aware of what's seen, but without the concept of I am seeing not me, something other than me. So this is an extremely direct form of practicing. And this is effectively what's being practiced in silent illumination meditation. We're directly seeing what's arising in each moment, purely as it is, without any conceptualization around it, without any perceptual distortion, without any reaction, and without any sense of self-identity in terms of this or that. So the really important part here is relinquishing the sense of self in the midst of this. So in the scene, there is just the scene, but there is no me in terms of the scene. There is no me seeing. There is no an object seen by me. There's just seeing. There's just the scene. That's it. So this is an exceptionally subtle and difficult way to practice, but it's also exceptionally direct. So, and it was quite successful. So the sutta continues. Then while the Blessed One was teaching this brief Dhamma teaching to Bāhiya, Bāhiya's mind was liberated from the corruptions by means of non-attachment. In other words, Bāhiya attained full enlightenment while listening to the Buddha say this. After the Blessed One had instructed Bāhiya with this brief instruction, he left. And not long after the Blessed One left, a young cow encountered Bāhiya and killed him. Normally people laugh at this part of the sutta. Then after the Blessed One had gone for alms in Savatthi, had eaten his meal, and was returning from alms round accompanied by several monks, when he left the city, he saw that Bāhiya had died. When he saw this, he said to the monks, "Monks, take Bāhiya's corpse, put it on a pallet, take it out, and burn it. Then build a monument. Monks, one of your fellow spiritual practitioners has died." "Yes, Bhante," those monks replied to the Blessed One. They took Bāhiya's corpse, put it on a pallet, took it out, burned it, and built a monument. Then they approached the Blessed One, paid respects to him, and sat to one side. When they were seated to one side, they said to the Blessed One, "Bhante, Bāhiya's corpse has been burned and a monument has been built. What is his destination? What is his next life?" The Buddha replies, "Monks, Bāhiya was wise. He practiced Dhamma in accordance with Dhamma. He did not concern me on account of the Dhamma. Monks, Bāhiya has attained final Nibbana." So this also is very interesting in that, so this random non-Buddhist practitioner shows up, asks to see the Buddha gives him a very brief instruction, then this guy gets killed by a cow, and the Buddha then says that he should be given the most honorable funeral possible. So building a monument for him, building a stupa. So this is something which was normally would only be done for very highly respected monastics and for royalty. It was not something that you would do for just any ordinary person. And so the Buddha confirms that Bāhiya had attained full awakening. And then the Buddha makes a further delicious statement. Then the Blessed One, having understood this matter, made this proclamation at that time. Where water, earth, fire, and wind have no hold, where stars do not shine and the sun has no radiance, where the moon does not glow and darkness cannot be found, when one personally knows this, a sage, a holy person of true wisdom. Then from formlessness, pleasure, and pain, they are free. That's the end of the sutta. And these last few verses here, they're talking about emptiness. They're talking about the nibbana dhatu, the asankata dhatu, the element of the unconditioned, that which is beyond conditions, that which is not affected by causality, that which cannot be described in terms of either existence or non-existence. So he's talking about the direct perception of the absolute. He's talking about the direct perception of the underpinning of all things, this direct perception of sunyata, of emptiness. So where water, earth, fire, and wind have no hold, where stars do not shine and the sun has no radiance, where the moon does not glow, and darkness cannot be found. So that last statement, darkness cannot be found, is very important because it's emphasizing that emptiness is not nothingness. Emptiness is beyond both existence and non-existence. It can't be defined in terms of either one. So if one is caught on existence, then one cannot see reality as it is. And if one is caught in non-existence, then one can't see reality as it is. And here he's emphasizing again that when one directly personally knows emptiness, when one directly personally knows the asankata dhatu, the element of the unconditioned, then one is freed from both form and formlessness, and from both pleasure and pain. This is another way of talking about full enlightenment, is to be completely free from form, formlessness, pleasure, and pain. So that's the end of this sutta. So this is one of the most Zen suttas that you'll find, because again, it's incredibly punchy, straight to the point, very direct, but also exceptionally difficult to practice. Which is why normally we do progressive meditations. We do step by step, working towards this kind of practice. So during the 7-day retreat, we started with samadhi practice, and then with gradually developing the recognition of impermanence. Then after doing that for a few days, then the mind can be ready for a very direct practice, such as being described here in the Bāhiya Sutta. But if one tries to go directly to using this sort of practice, then one tends to waste a lot of time. So one thinks that in the scene there is just the scene, but actually in the scene there is a bunch of misconception, delusion, self-attachment, desire, aversion, and perceptual distortions. But we think it's just the scene because we don't clearly understand how deeply immersed we are in delusion. We don't understand how deeply immersed we are in self-attachment. So we think we're practicing in accordance with the instructions here, but in actuality, we're not really doing much of anything. So this is why it's often necessary, usually necessary, to do gradual step-by-step progressive meditation practices until one's mind is well prepared for something exceptionally straightforward like this, something that cuts directly to the heart of the matter, like the instructions in the sutta. So I don't really have too much else to say on this. Well, I mean, actually I could talk for hours on this sutta. But I'd like to go ahead and open up for discussion and see what's on your minds, and if perhaps I can help clarify what the Buddha is talking about here for you.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So well, first of all, welcome to Galaxy from Malaysia. Marielle, hello. Ella, good to see you. Boon, Preeti, welcome back. Ethan, Rupa, Geeta, everybody's very enthusiastic about this sutta. Hello, Gabriella, who is asking, Actually, Boone is asking, Bhante, if we see a photo of starvation, does it mean we are not proliferating our mind to feel sadness or any reaction?
So, a great thing to do is to ask yourself, what would the Buddha do? So, when I was a kid, there were these really popular bumper stickers that you would see a lot. WWJD, what would Jesus do? So you can just replace that with WWBD, what would the Buddha do? So what would the Buddha do if he saw starvation? Would he be sad? Would he be upset? No, of course not. What he would do what he could to alleviate the suffering that the people were facing. So that's the proper response. You can recognize that's terrible, these people are suffering. You can wish, may they be free of suffering. And you can do what you can, which will alleviate their suffering, without getting sad or upset or disturbed. So those negative emotional reactions don't actually benefit us in any way. They just create more suffering. They just add our own suffering on top of what the other people are experiencing. That's not doing any good. That's just contributing to the dukkha of the world, just piling up more dukkha. But this also, again, doesn't mean practicing apathy and indifference, but rather it's cultivating that genuine heart of compassion, that genuine wish for those who suffer to be free of suffering. And that genuine contemplation, how can I help? Okay.
Thank you. And Gabriella asks, Bhante, do you think Bāhiya counts as a layman arahat?
No.
Why not?
That's an interesting question. I've actually never thought of that. So Bāhiya was a contemplative of some sort, and the feeling I get from the sutta is that he was a monk, just not a Buddhist monk, but he was a monk of some other spiritual order at the time. Or possibly he was a solo practitioner. Again, the sutta doesn't really go into any detail on what Bāhiya was doing. What we do know is that he wasn't aware of the Buddha, and that he also didn't know how to practice Buddhism. But we don't know what he was doing. So a number of teachers that I know of, when they talk about this sutta, they surmise that Bāhiya had been practicing some kind of meditation practice for many, many, many years. He was just missing some critical components. And this also is why Bāhiya was able to attain enlightenment very quickly, was because all the Buddha had to do was to point out what Bāhiya was missing. So the Buddha didn't have to lay out the whole path. He just had to point out the missing pieces. But yeah, I mean, Bāhiya, he almost certainly was not a Buddhist monk. But that doesn't necessarily mean he was a layperson. Unless by layperson you mean anyone who's not a Buddhist monk, which some people do use it in that way. But yeah, no, I think it's pretty clear that he was a monk of some other sort besides Buddhist, but we don't know what exactly. Okay.
Yeah, Gabriella says, in this sutta, it seems that the idea is to remove conceptualization. So is that the goal of silent illumination?
So the goal of silent illumination is to directly perceive reality exactly as it is. So that does involve allowing conceptualization to drop, but it also can just mean seeing through conceptualization. So not being caught in concept. So in the cognized, there will be just the cognized. In other words, when a concept appears in the mind, we're not fooled by it. We see it, but we're not fooled by it. And we also recognize that there's no me involved. It's just a mental object. So when a cloud floats across the sky, we don't think I am floating across the sky. We just recognize it's a cloud floating across the sky. So when a thought appears in the mind, it's just a thought appearing in the mind. It's not me or mine, it's just a thought. So similarly, when a concept appears in the mind, well, it's just a concept. You don't need to believe it, you don't need to take it seriously, and you don't need to think of it as being you. It's just a thought, just a concept, just a perception. It's just another fragment of samsara. That's all.
Thank you, Bante. And Rupa says, a rope in the dark, a layman could identify it as a snake and suffer further due to fear arising. But on Arhat, do they see just the characteristics of the object? There is no perception or further thought process. Is that what in the seeing there is only the seeing means?
Well, I'm not an arhat, so it's a little bit risky for me to talk about how an arhat sees the world, except based on what I understand from the suttas. But yeah, I would say that an arhat, someone who has fully trained their mind, they would see sight, they would see shape and form, color. They would see the image of the rope, but there would not be the perceptual distortion of believing that the rope is a snake. There might be the recognition that there is a habit, a perceptual habit, which in the past would have created that experience. But they would not fall into that error. No. Okay.
And Sally says, when we are in a situation and don't have time for gradual training, for example, we're already in mental or physical pain, how could we practice that time? Hard to direct, see reality neither.
Yeah, in that case, you can try using something direct like this. So one thing that can be helpful when you feel overwhelmed is actually to just try to stop doing anything at all. Completely stop. And sometimes if you do that completely enough, just stopping, then you also stop being disturbed by whatever's happening. You just see it for what it is. It's like, oh, this is just sensation. No problem. Okay.
And Jim says, good morning. I can't believe how early you got me up for one of my favorite suttas. Great.
Really? Unless you're in a different state or country.
No, Jim Shargo. Well, it's a start for waking up.
8 a.m. is early?
Depends on when you go to bed.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, well done, Jim. Good to see you back. And Gabriela says, is this practice used primarily to remove papancha?
No, this practice is to directly attain full enlightenment. So overcoming papancha is an element of that, of course. Yeah, and there's definitely no papancha here. But what the Buddha is talking about here is he's talking about direct, unfiltered sensory awareness as a way of developing the recognition of not-self. That's actually the method the Buddha is giving here. So ultimately, the method he's giving here is anatta sanya. But it's an extraordinarily direct and subtle form of anatta sanya. Okay?
Thank you. And Jens is asking, Bante, should we cultivate the Brahmavihara so that we do respond to sights, sounds, etc. in a way WTBD? I don't know what WTBD.
Oh, what the Buddha would do?
Oh.
WWBD. WWBD.
Okay. Have equanimity and in a way that follows this sutta?
Yeah, so you absolutely should practice the Brahmaviharas because the Buddha talked over and over about practicing the Brahmaviharas. And the Buddha himself had already fully mastered the Brahmaviharas. It's really important to note that the Brahma Viharas include compassion, but also equanimity, as you pointed out. So compassion is the genuine wish for those who suffer to be free of suffering. But there's also equanimity, which is the recognition that everything which is happening due to causes and conditions. So that works to temper the mind, so that the compassion doesn't lead into despair or sadness. It's recognizing, oh, things are unfolding exactly the way they should. Nonetheless, may beings be free of suffering. Okay.
And Sally is saying, just stop completely. For example, physical pain ongoing, how to stop? Not easy to observe neither.
Yeah, so one way that I relate to this is it's what Zen Master Dogen called taking the backward step. So taking a step back from your experience and viewing it through a third-person perspective. And that has a way of taking the sting out of whatever you're experiencing. Because then it's no longer me experiencing this. Rather, it's simply an experience unfolding before you. It's the difference between watching a movie and being in the movie. Okay?
Okay. That was the last question. So unless anything pops on.
Jen has a question.
So for this method, I feel like it's seeing the thing as it is, but then there's still someone who's doing the seeing. Isn't that a kind of clinging, like clinging to a consciousness?
Yeah, it's attachment to the idea I am seeing, which means you're not yet quite doing this method. So in the scene, there's just the scene. There is not I am seeing that. Okay.
And Jim is saying, my current basic working model of awakening is a combination of this sutta, the idea of a place of no abiding, and a base of really good morality. What do you think is missing from that?
Samadhi. Otherwise, you're on pretty good track with that.
Yeah, pretty good, Jim. Sally says, Bhante, the unconditional world is outside of this conditional world?
I would not say outside, no. No, I would say it completely interpenetrates. Yeah.
And Raymond asks, who's Jen?
Jen is one of our residents. So we are very fortunate that during this quarantine, we have two wonderful long-term residents. So Jen and May, who are here helping out the three monastics and joining in the monastery practice. And it's been really lovely having them with us.
Okay. That's it, I think.
Okay, well, a short sutta study session for a short sutta. So thank you all for joining in, and please continue with your practice.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right. Well, we're going to meet this evening again at 7:30 p.m. New York City time, and tomorrow again 8 a.m. So there will be always sutta study since we've resumed sutta study. So lots of good stuff, and and every evening at 7:30 p.m. So have a great